And the last area, Area E, is into a 3-foot wide trench for 4 infiltrator units that will be 25 feet long. And we've placed this one adjacent to the fill that is needed for the septic system. And again, to minimize the amount of fill so we don't have fill areas all over the place. We've tried to compact it as much as we could so that there'd be less impact. The slab of the building, because of the high water table, is actually stepped inside the building to 3 different levels so that the bottom of the slab is at least 12 inches above the water table in the 3 separate areas. As you come in from the driveway, it steps up at 3 different levels, and again, that will be a minimum of 12 inches above the water table for the bottom of the slab as required by the requirements. The septic system is a bottomless sand filter with an Advantex pre-treatment unit. I believe you're fairly familiar with those systems, and they do meet the requirements of the ordinance to reduce BODs, nitrogen, so on and so forth.
That's a state-of-the-art technology, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
That's of course. I'm looking at your drawing of the roof plan, and I just wanted to confirm, Mike, that the water collection, for example, for A, you want to discharge, downspout to the discharge in this, what looks to be the southwest corner of the house.
Yes.
But there is a gable on the house. Are you running the gutter? Is there another downspout at the other end of the house? I guess.
No, they're going to run a fascia and they're going to put the gutter right across.
Right across the gable on both sides of the house?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay, so that'll just be that one downspout.
Okay. So all of A is collected in that downspout? All
Yes.
of E is collected in
Yes.
this downspout over here?
Yes, there's a couple of spots, and I apologize, I'm not sure exactly where some of the decks is a pergola. That'll be just some rafters over the deck. And what they'll do is they'll build the gutter inside of that, so it won't be shown and so forth. So there's been little tricks to try to hide some of the gutters and downspouts into some of the areas that you're concerned about.
You have this detail of the standard chamber, but there are observation ports for it. I think that those are going to be for the infiltrator units.
Okay, yes.
Are you going to have the observation ports?
You know, I didn't really specify they're an option, and I didn't know it's not required. It was just something we kind of showed that if the owner, if there would ever be a reason to look at them, that the inspection ports are obviously a lot easier to do that, but it's not a requirement. I would think that if you want to have those in there, that we could specify that you could have one at the end of each trench, let's say, in case they ever had to look at that, sure.
I guess the question is about maintenance for these systems, and whether they need maintenance, whether they need to have a maintenance plan, or whether they are just lock and leave it, put it in and walk away.
Typically, that's all that happens is lock and leave it type of situation. It's pretty much a closed system, other than from the gutters going down to the downspouts. After that, it's all a closed pipe system in essence. So there really, in theory, shouldn't be a reason to go in there and clean anything out or anything like that. It's rainwater, clean water. It's not like a biomat would be developed at the interfaces or something like that you typically would see with the septic system.
Well, suppose that, with all the flooding we had, then would a high water table cause anything to get into that system and start clogging up some of the holes out? Or is that, has there been any...
Not in my experience.
Any experience on these?
Not in any of my experience. If you wanted to put a clean out or an inspection report type thing at the end of each trench, that's fine. We can certainly stipulate to that. It's not a big expense or anything. It's probably not a bad idea. It's actually a pretty good idea. So. that's
At
fine.
least you can see it.
Yeah, you know, it's a little,
The other thing I wondered is you didn't calculate how much runoff there was off of the over-the-door situation, and so I was just kind of wondering how much water was actually going to end up in those flower beds, because sometimes that destroys the flower beds to get all that runoff.
yeah, it's a peak roof.
Yeah.
It's an 80 square foot roof area, so it'll be 40 square feet on each side. The amount of runoff for these calculations, I kind of understand what you're saying, but to meet the requirements of the calculations, lawn and wooded area is the same as the flower bed and so forth, so there's no increase in runoff from that area. But that,
I didn't quite understand that, because you still have the roof area, so the roof area is keeping the water from going right underneath it. Why is there no increase just because it goes into a flower bed versus onto the lawn?
well, the amount, you know, it's a 15% runoff rate, let's say, okay? So if you're adding a little bit from a roof and so forth, you're really not, you're really, as long as you're not more than 50% of the runoff rate, you're not doubling it and so forth, you know? You've got that factor because of the runoff of the 15%. That there really shouldn't be an increase in
But you
that.
still have
The amount can absorb it.
You still have 80 feet of impervious surface, so everything else had a certain amount of water that was running off because it couldn't go straight down through the roof. It goes off the roof, to the side of the roof,
Yes.
right? I don't quite understand why that was, of all the calculations, you know, it makes, your thought is fine.
Yeah.
The flower bed, I just thought, well, why not? You have 40 feet of roof on each side, so.
But the runoff from the flower bed would be less than it is from a lawn and so forth. So they just naturally absorb it.
But there's runoff from the roof, and that's what I was questioning.
Okay, so your question, you know what, I would have to say that I didn't do that calculation. I just assumed that the runoff from a flower bed or a planting bed would be less than what was there now, which is lawn and or timber.
Okay.
So it's naturally a little bit of a decrease in that flower bed area. I guess the calculation that should have been done is the area of the flower bed, what the amount of reduction is, to see if it offsets the 40 square feet from the roof. I didn't do that actually, you're right, Nicole. That's right.
Okay.
How would that change your drainage plan?
I don't believe it would change it. I believe that the amount that the area of the flower bed should more than compensate for it.
The last thing I want to know, and this is also a question for you, Mike, which is that at the south end of the property, right on the property line, there's about a 3 or 4 foot berm all the way across the property line. I don't know if anybody noticed that on the board, on the commission, but there's a big berm between the property and the right-of-way on Boyd Street. And there's, apparently, it's to prevent the water coming down the street, coming across the street from the south and the higher elevations from going onto the property.
Was that in the wooded section?
It's in the wooded section.
Yeah.
On Boyd Street is the south end of the property.
When I was out there, I actually found it to be, you know, everyone takes their lawn clippings from, there's a path coming from this house, and there's one from this house, one from this house, and so there might be, over the years, there might be lawn
Well, it's
clippings.
right straight along the
Yeah, it might
property
be where
line.
they just, you know.
I mean, it looks a little bit more thoughtful.
compost.
You know, Mike, it looks a little more thoughtful than because there's only one property next to, you know,
Yeah,
directly.
there was just something I noticed that everyone
Yeah.
seems to cut in there.
Well, my question is that something that we are encouraging in Jamestown, is people berming up to keep the water from sheet flowing
We-
across the street into your property?
As a public works department, we get a lot of calls for that. For water we try to maintain the water within the street to divert it into a basin. Where it's collected and then.
So you want it to stay in the street, you
It's-
want it to go to that catch, because there's a grate down at the bottom of the street.
Exactly, and I don't know if that was the reason for the berm, it may be something, part of the landscape, but
Yeah.
we do a lot of berms along roads, grass berms to keep the water in the, you know, that falls on the street,
Okay.
in the street.